Stevie Nicks has just broken a silence that has lasted more than 4 decades. At the age of 77, she officially confirmed what the audience had long suspected, talked about, and scrutinized: every look and song shared between her and Tom Petty. Nicks has come clean about the relationship that has rocked the music industry. What was once whispered behind closed doors is now revealed openly and clearly. This confirmation not only clarifies the past but also revisits the entire journey of attachment between two people who once walked side by side and deeply influenced each other without any binding titles. Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty were closely linked in many ways, on stage, in the studio, behind the scenes, and in little-known moments of their lives. Their decades-long friendship fueled endless speculation. They appeared together on tour, sharing the spotlight as two unusually compatible pieces. Nicks once called Petty one of the most important people in my life, and Petty repeatedly emphasized that she was a rare friend. The media didn't need much to push the speculation beyond friendship. What made the public believe the unconfirmed stories was that Stevie Nicks never said anything. She kept quiet for years, occasionally smiling evasively when asked about Petty, making any silence seem suspicious. The early 80s were when things were at their most unpredictable. Nicks had just gone solo, Petty was a musical leader, and the Adiyar. Two of them lived in a world where artistic chemistry could easily be mistaken for something else. They recorded together, performed together, and often played together at major events. Stop Draggin' My Heart Around wasn't just the standout track on Belladonna. It became a symbol of the bond between the two individuals that was so strong. The way they looked at each other while performing, the way they handled their interactions on stage, everything felt beyond professional. Nicks seriously considered leaving Fleetwood Mac to join the Heartbreakers, not just for the music, but because she wanted to be closer to Petty. This was not a whim, but a genuine desire. But Petty refused outright. "You have your own path," he told her, "and it's big enough." This refusal was a key point. Observers saw it as Petty's way of keeping boundaries, while Nicks saw in him a special kind of concern, steadfast, clear, and not letting emotions get in the way. The distance created did not diminish their closeness. The tours continued, and Petty invited Nicks on stage to enthusiastic cheers. But appearing together, writing together, and sharing things that not everyone understood, there was still one thing missing: official confirmation. And that led to a long period of ambiguity. For more than 30 years, interviews avoided getting to the heart of the matter. Stevie Nicks never directly denied it, nor did she explicitly confirm it. It has always been somewhere in between, close enough to believe, far enough to doubt. It wasn't until November 2024, when she attended a major music event in Los Angeles, that Stevie Nicks said something she had never said before. "People always thought Tom and I were something," she said. "But I always thought of him as a brother, someone I admired but never loved in the way people imagined." That statement was quoted by major publications like Rolling Stone and People. That night, longtime fans reacted with mixed emotions. Some were surprised, some were relieved, but all agreed Stevie had finally said what everyone had been wondering. More importantly, she not only confirmed the truth but also indirectly denied all previous speculation. Previously, rumors were often based on performance emotions, ambiguous words, or an inexplicable closeness between two independent but intertwined artists. But Stevie herself, with a decisive tone and a look that no longer wavered, drew a clear line. To her, Tom Petty was a mentor, a spiritual pillar and artistic partner, not a lover. This belated confirmation did not lessen the weight of their relationship. Instead, it helps one look back at every interaction between these two people with true respect. No longer as a fantasy, but as a rare example. Two great personalities passing through each other's lives without having to cross the line to make sense. The story doesn't end there, because Tom Petty's influence on Stevie Nicks is not just what the public perceives, but how she writes, lives, and overcomes the most difficult times in her life. And that is what makes this connection so special, so unique that no one can replace it. When Stevie Nicks decided to go solo after her success with Fleetwood Mac, the first person she turned to was not a trendy producer, but Tom Petty. To her, Petty not only represented American rock with a strong street feel, but also someone who wrote songs from the heart, without embellishment or calculation. That attracted Stevie intensely. She once told him directly, "I want to sing like you. I want to learn from you." And Petty responded, with action. In 1981, while working on Belladonna, Stevie was introduced to producer Jimmy Iovine, who was also the musical manager of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Iovine was the bridge that led Nicks and Petty to their iconic collaboration, "Stop Draggin' My Heart Around." The song was originally written by Petty for the Hard Promises album, but when he heard Nicks's voice, he decided to give her the song, on the condition that he would sing it as a duet. This was no spontaneous decision. Petty wanted to make sure the song remained his own, while also giving Nicks the opportunity to take it to the next level, without losing her individuality. The result was a number 3 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, but more importantly, it was a moment when two strong-willed artists entered each other's creative space without one overpowering the other. Nicks didn't sing over Petty, and Petty didn't force Nicks to follow traditional rock. They let each other breathe, giving each other space. This was rare in improvisational duos, and is why the song became one of the most beloved duets of the 80s. Around the same time, the two recorded Insider, a deeply personal song that Petty wrote out of personal reflection. Nicks loved it and wanted to include it on Belladonna, but Petty felt it was too intimate to share. He kept it for his album, but he still asked Nicks to sing backing vocals, a way of saying that she was still part of the story, just not in the lead. That subtlety is one of the things that made Nicks always say that Petty knew her better than anyone who ever loved me. Their first collaborations didn't stop there. I Will Run to You from 1983's The Wild Heart is another example of their creative connection continuing over time. Petty co-wrote the song along with his close collaborator Mike Campbell to create a melancholy, energetic love song. Nicks said that while recording the song, she felt able to be herself without having to defend or prove anything. Petty's influence on Nicks's music is most evident in her lyrics and song structure. After getting to know and work with him, Nicks began to move away from writing in long, free verse. She chose to get straight to the point, keeping the emotion but not getting lost in the vagueness. Petty helped her find focus in her writing, especially after the chaotic heights of Fleetwood Mac. As for Petty, he once remarked that Nicks's voice was one of the most emotionally raw sounds he'd ever heard, and that she doesn't just sing with technique, she sings with wounds. That's why he was willing to share stages, studios, and even ideas with Nicks, even though Petty himself was very private and uncooperative. After their shared success, Petty continued to give Nicks regular input on her solo projects, even though they were no longer officially collaborating. She also made no secret of the fact that she kept in touch and asked Petty for advice during times of creative frustration. Their musical connection was inextricably intertwined, and while they didn't end up together, the two singers left an irreplaceable mark on each other's careers. Hard advice. Stevie Nicks has always looked to Tom Petty as the man who kept her grounded when things were falling apart. In 1994, after a long struggle with addiction and the chaos of post-Fleetwood Mac, Nicks left rehab in hopes of restarting her career. The first person she turned to was Petty. She wanted to make music with him, hoping to rekindle her old passion. But what Nicks got was not a recording offer, but the cold truth. Petty said no. He told Nicks that she wasn't ready and that what she needed wasn't another album, but real stability. "You need to get on with your life first," he said. For an artist who had used music to save her, the rejection initially hurt. She felt abandoned. But then, as she herself admitted, it was a wake-up call. From this experience, Stevie wrote Hard Advice. The song was a response to Petty's blunt words, not soft, not comforting, but timely. The lyrics reflected an inner conflict between a woman who wanted to continue to be in the spotlight and a soul that needed a break to keep from falling apart again. Nicks once told American songwriter that if Petty had agreed to record with her, she might have continued to slide. But it was that rejection in all its honesty that brought her back to herself. This wasn't the only time Petty played a driving role in Stevie's life. When Nicks expressed her desire to leave Fleetwood Mac and join the Heartbreakers in the early 80s, Petty also declined. He told her she didn't need to be part of a boy band to define herself. "You're already a star," he said. Petty believed that if Nicks joined the Heartbreakers, she would lose what made her different, the creative freedom that a solo career could provide. The decision caused a temporary conflict between them. Nicks felt pushed out, but she later acknowledged that it was one of the turning points in finding her own voice, separate from the Fleetwood Mac legacy. When Petty died suddenly in October 2017, Stevie was devastated. "When Tom died, it was like my heart was broken," she said at the 2018 pre-Grammys party. "I wasn't prepared for it." Nicks knew Petty was unwell. They stayed in touch by phone in the final months of his life, but she never imagined he would be gone so soon. Petty died of a drug overdose from a combination of drugs, including opioids prescribed for pain from hip surgery. That was hard for Stevie to swallow, especially since she herself had been on the brink of addiction. His death made her reflect on her own journey and the times she had been lucky enough to avoid a similar fate. Since his death, Stevie has kept a piece of Petty's memory close to her. In a 2025 conversation with Remind magazine, she revealed that she regularly listens to Petty's "I Won't Back Down" as a way to lift her spirits. She keeps a scarf that Petty once gave her, an inexpensive gift, but one that encapsulates the emotional bond between the two. For Nicks, it's a symbol of survival, a reminder that Petty is still somewhere watching from afar. Petty's passing doesn't erase his influence on Stevie Nicks. On the contrary, it makes every word, every piece of advice from the past all the more precious. And that's what keeps her going, knowing that a piece of Petty lives on in what she creates today, a perspective through time. In Stevie Nicks's eyes, Tom Petty was never just a friend. He played a different role at each stage of her life. From a musical role model to someone who gave her unspoken advice, to someone she turned to when she needed to find her bearings. Their relationship changed over time, but Petty's influence never faded. In the 1980s, when Stevie first started her solo career, she looked up to Petty as an untouchable icon. He had a certain quality, and he didn't need to be loud to be respected. That consistency made Nicks feel he was the kind of person she needed around her, both as a colleague and as a guardian to keep her from slipping away from herself in the early years of their collaboration. Stevie always tried to please Petty. When she wrote songs, she would ask herself, "Does he think this is good enough?" And during recordings, if Petty was present, she would pay double attention for him. His agreeing to do a duet was more than a collaboration, it was an acknowledgement. By the 1990s, as both their careers began to take off, Stevie no longer idolized Petty in a one-sided way. Their relationship was deeper and more real. Petty became someone she could confide in and ask for advice without having to keep her distance. His advice to get settled before you start writing music again was a milestone. From then on, she saw Petty not only as a great artist but also as a trusted mentor, someone who wasn't afraid to tell her what she needed to hear, even when it was hard to accept. After Petty died, the way Stevie talked about him changed. It was no longer a recitation of accomplishments or performance memories, but emotional reminiscences. She talked about the late-night phone calls, the little messages, the comfort she felt whenever he spoke. One of the things Stevie often mentioned was Petty's eyes, a gaze that was always alert, that knew what she was feeling within seconds of meeting him. "Petty had the ability," she said, "to read my mind before I even knew what I was thinking. Don't try to explain anything now," Stevie said in an interview in early 2025. "I just know that if it weren't for Tom, I probably wouldn't be singing today." This isn't a grand statement. For her, Petty isn't a thing of the past. He's a fundamental part of how she lives and makes music, a quiet but lasting influence. Not everyone has a friend, a collaborator, and a mentor in one person. Stevie Nicks has, and she holds it as an irreplaceable part of her journey. The name Tom Petty is no longer a shadow of the past. but an echo that still resonates in every note she plays today. Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty were never a couple on paper, nor were they ever officially partners. But in their own unique way, their names were linked together in the minds of millions of music lovers, as a symbol of a deep connection that went beyond the conventions of the entertainment industry. Their relationship became an indelible part of the collective memory of American rock history. Ever since Stop Draggin' My Heart Around was released, the public has started to see them as a musical duo. Over time, every time Nicks and Petty appeared together, whether for a few minutes on stage or a few short conversations backstage, fans reacted strongly. Social media, newspapers, music forums, all paid special attention to every moment they were together. They didn't need to do anything too big to attract attention, because the parallel existence of those two personalities was enough to create emotion. After Tom Petty's death, Stevie Nicks became something of an unofficial public ambassador for his memory. She would often dedicate a portion of her show to singing songs that had been associated with Petty. Never explained, never spoken at length. Just a musical reminder. Her performances often ended in silence, a kind of deep reverence without any theatricality. The media also repeatedly portrayed their relationship as a friendship worth studying. Rolling Stone called it a rare alliance in the music industry where respect trumps suspicion and gossip. People magazine wrote, "Not every story needs to end in love to be profound. Sometimes friendship is all it takes to last." These observations are not flattering, but based on decades of companionship, each in their own way, but always holding each other's place at important milestones. Their bond is further illustrated in the documentary Tom Petty, Heartbreak Beach Party, which will be released in late 2024. Stevie Nicks appears as the main narrator, taking the audience through each stage of Petty's life and career in her own words. In the film, she does not paint Petty as a distant legend. Instead, she tells him as a vulnerable, principled man who always used music as a last line of defense. The way Nicks talks about Petty in the film is not media-oriented, but rather like she is talking to someone who is still alive somewhere nearby. If you feel this story is worth remembering, please like, share with those who love their music, and leave a comment to look back on the precious moments. Don't forget to subscribe to continue accompanying these emotional musical journeys.